Behind the scenes of Jungkook's tense arrival in the United States, amidst flashing cameras, tight-lipped staff, and heightened security, it wasn't the agency making the most critical calls. It was Jin. As reports swirl about sightseeing threats and leaked locations, insiders now confirm that Jin, still fresh from his military discharge, was the one who quietly stepped in to manage Jungkook's protection from thousands of miles away. From hiring additional private security to requesting last-minute hotel changes, Jin orchestrated everything not as a BTS member, but as a brother. A brother who knew exactly what Jungkook needed before he could even say it. Armies are calling it the ultimate act of love, not just loyalty. Because when the world demands too much from Jungkook, Jin does what no label ever could: make him feel safe again. It wasn't announced in any press release. It wasn't part of any official itinerary, and HYBE certainly didn't post about it on Weverse. But in the silence behind the headlines, something deeply personal was happening. As Jungkook touched down in America, greeted not by calm but by chaos, it was Jin, his brother, who had quietly taken over the most crucial part of his journey, making sure he felt safe. Insiders close to BTS have now confirmed what many armies had long suspected. Jin, freshly returned from military service, had been in constant contact not just with Jungkook, but with key members of the management team. According to one staff member who asked to remain anonymous, it was Jin who first flagged the possibility of a sightseeing leak 2 days before Jungkook's arrival. He wasn't just watching social media trends, he was dissecting them, reading between the lines, identifying potential threats with an instinct only an older brother could possess. And when those red flags turned into reality, it wasn't the company who reacted first. It was Jin. Double his security. Move his hotel. Don't wait for protocol, Jin allegedly instructed in a private message, one that's since been corroborated by multiple sources. Those instructions came before the fans screamed, before the flashes exploded at JFK, before Jungkook even left the plane. It was preemptive. It was personal. To the outside world, it looked like Jungkook was protected by the system. Black vans, suited guards, earpieces, and mirrored sunglasses, all the markers of a global star's routine movements. But what fans didn't see was the invisible layer behind all that. Jin's voice over the phone. Jin's name on private memos. Jin's presence in the decision to keep Jungkook away from certain exits and unauthorized hotel guests. And then came the message, the one Jungkook saw just after landing. Text me the second you feel something's off. Don't hesitate. I'll always answer. It wasn't just a brother checking in. It was a commander quietly orchestrating a shield in the dark. Jungkook responded with a heart and the words, "I'm here, Hyung." It's a little crazy already. But what wasn't said in text was already being set in motion. Security doubled. Hotel routes rerouted. Staff reshuffled. All because one person, far away, refused to sleep until his younger brother felt okay. This wasn't the first time Jin had acted like this. Fans still remember his words during his military hiatus, when he spoke about how hard it was not being able to watch over the members, and how he felt helpless when they were stressed. Now that he's back, that helplessness has turned into action. Jungkook didn't ask him to step in. He didn't need to. Jin simply knew. And Jungkook, for all his independence and maturity, didn't reject that help. He welcomed it, because sometimes, even the strongest need someone who knows when to step in without being asked. Later that night, after the dust had somewhat settled, Jungkook found a handwritten note slipped under the door of his hotel suite. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. "You're not alone. I've got you." It read, in neat, careful Hangul. He didn't need confirmation. The message didn't come from staff. It didn't come from HYBE. It came from home. Somewhere in a quiet part of Seoul, Jin sat by his phone, eyes tired but alert, watching as social media lit up with hashtags he wished didn't need to exist. Hashtag protect Jungkook. Hashtag Jin is watching. Hashtag respect privacy. But he didn't post. He didn't trend. He didn't need the world to know he was doing what he was doing. His job wasn't to be seen. His job in that moment was to protect. And when Jungkook finally closed his eyes that night in a hotel room that had been changed 3 times, guarded by men who had only been hired because Jin said so, He didn't feel like a celebrity. He felt like someone who mattered. Not because of charts or stage lights, but because someone somewhere was still staying up just to make sure he was okay. That someone was his brother, his Hyung, his anchor in the storm. And in the end, that's what saved him. Not the guards, not the tinted glass, but love, the kind that doesn't need a spotlight to shine. Morning in New York arrived quietly, with rays of light slicing through the hotel curtains, but Jungkook remained motionless, cocooned in heavy silence under layers of blankets. The night had been long, not just because of jet lag, but because of everything that had crashed down on him the moment his feet touched American soil. The airport scene wasn't unfamiliar, yet it had drained him more than any stadium performance. Cameras too close, fans too loud, strangers who knew too much. His heart still raced from the memory, not because of excitement, but because of the fear that, this time, something might truly go wrong. But as his eyes slowly opened and adjusted to the unfamiliar ceiling above him, he reached for his phone on the nightstand, an instinct, a lifeline. One unread message. Not from management. Not from a fellow celebrity. From Jin. Room service will knock in 10. Eat well. Don't argue. Jungkook blinked. He sat up. His fingers hesitated above the reply button. He wanted to ask how Jin knew he hadn't eaten. How Jin always knew. But instead, he just smiled. A real, small smile that tugged at the corners of his exhaustion. Exactly 10 minutes later, there was a soft knock at the door. The tray had his favorites.
Jérôme-Marie.
Seaweed soup. A small bottle of banana milk chilled just right. Tucked between the napkins, folded neatly, was another note. If you don't eat, I'm flying there tonight.
No jokes. No merci.
Jungkook chuckled under his breath, shoulders easing for the first time in hours. He took a bite, and for the first time since he left Seoul, the food didn't taste like hotel plastic. It tasted like home. Because even thousands of miles away, Jin had found a way to bring home to him. Across the ocean, Jin didn't sleep. He sat in his apartment, lights low, his phone in hand, watching. Not for fame, not for fans, but for the only thing that mattered to him in this moment, Jungkook's peace of mind. He didn't post on social media. He didn't join the trending hashtags. His role wasn't to be seen or praised. It was to shield. And when another message came in, just a photo from Jungkook, no caption, just the breakfast tray half-eaten and a thumbs-up drawn with ketchup on the plate, Jin exhaled. It wasn't about food. It was about trust. It was about knowing that even if the whole world turned loud, confusing, and cruel, his little brother would never have to face it alone. That trust wasn't built on stage. It was built in quiet dorm rooms years ago, in car rides after midnight schedules, in silences shared when words couldn't do justice to pain. And now, as Jungkook took on America with nothing but himself and the weight of millions of eyes watching his every move, Jin had once again become the constant that held him together. Later that afternoon, fans spotted an extra security detail near Jungkook's hotel. HYBE didn't release a statement. The bodyguards didn't wear any badges. But some armies whispered online, "That's Jin's doing. We just know." And they were right, because sometimes love doesn't scream. It whispers through actions. It shields in silence. It wraps around someone like a protective shadow that doesn't ask for recognition. It just acts. By sunset, as Jungkook prepared for a closed-door rehearsal rumored to be for an unannounced US performance, he glanced once more at his phone. No new texts, but the last message from Jin still glowed at the top of the screen. "You don't have to be strong today. Let me do it for you." And for Jungkook, who had built a global image on strength, charisma, and unshakable confidence, that one message gave him permission to breathe. Because no matter how far the road stretched ahead of him, he knew that behind him, watching, protecting, loving, was his Hyung. And that was enough to keep walking. As the evening deepened and the city's neon glow replaced the soft warmth of day, Jungkook stood quietly near the hotel suite window, his silhouette cast in pale gold against the glass. New York was moving fast outside, but inside, time seemed to slow down. The rehearsal had ended without much fanfare. No press, no applause. Only the quiet shuffle of crew members packing equipment and adjusting lights for another run tomorrow. It wasn't exhaustion that kept him frozen in place now. It was a kind of stillness he rarely got to feel. A fragile pause in the noise of fame. He stared at the skyline, his reflection faintly mirroring back at him, but the voice in his mind wasn't his. It was Jin's, replaying over and over. "You don't have to be strong today." Those words hit differently as the lights outside blurred into a hazy glow. For so long, being strong wasn't a choice, it was a requirement. The industry didn't ask if he was okay. It expected him to be. Smile on stage, charm in interviews, perfection in every frame. But now, just for a moment, he felt permission to soften. He took out his phone again, this time opening the group chat. Jimin had dropped a meme. Yoongi had left a sleepy fighting. Taeyum, of course, sent a blurry photo of a dog in a sweater. But no one messaged like Jin. There was a steadiness to his concern, an unshakable calm in his chaos. Jungkook hesitated for a second, then typed, "Hyung, you always know when I'm falling." He hit send before he could second-guess the vulnerability in it. The message was read instantly. The reply came 2 minutes later. "That's because I've seen you climb." That was it.
No poetry, no dramatic comfort.
Just something achingly true. Jin had seen it all, from the teenage boy who flinched under pressure, to the soloist standing tall in front of the world. He knew every version of Jungkook, and he had loved every version with the same unwavering heart. Later that night, as Jungkook sat with a warm cup of tea, another gift from the staff, sent under a note that simply said, "Hyung said this helps you sleep," he allowed himself to let go, just a little. The pressure in his chest loosened. The weight in his shoulders lifted slightly. He didn't need to perform here. Not for anyone. Not in this quiet moment where Jin's invisible presence wrapped around him like a familiar melody. In Seoul, Jin finally allowed himself a moment of rest too. His phone still close, always charged, always ready. He didn't know if Jungkook would message again that night, but it didn't matter. The important thing was that Jungkook knew he could. That door was never closed. Not by distance. Not by duty. Not even by silence. And maybe that's what made their bond different. It wasn't built for headlines. It wasn't designed for fan service or fleeting viral moments. It was made in the quiet spaces between chaos. When the cameras were off, the crowd was gone, and only love remained. That night, as both brothers, miles apart, drifted into sleep under different skies, one thing was certain. No matter how far fame took them, how many stages they stood on alone, or how many flashing cameras tried to steal their peace, they had already found something that the world could never touch. Each other. And in that, they were unbreakable. Morning arrived not with fanfare, but with a soft knock. Jungkook stirred slightly, the thin light of dawn slicing through the edge of the blackout curtains. His mind was still halfway between sleep and wakefulness, his heart unsure whether it was still carrying yesterday's weight or simply trying to brace for another storm. He didn't expect anyone, no scheduled staff meetings, no rehearsals until afternoon. For a moment, he thought he had imagined it. Then the knock came again. He wrapped a hoodie over his shoulders and padded quietly toward the door, peeking through the peephole. His breath caught. Standing outside was a figure that shouldn't have been there. Not by the schedule. Not by any official arrangement. But there he was, baseball cap pulled low, face mask tucked under his chin, shoulders slightly hunched from the long flight but unmistakable nonetheless. Jin. Jungkook opened the door slowly, and for a second, they both just stood there. No words. Just the kind of silence that comes when something deep inside you finally exhales. "You're really here?" Jungkook whispered, voice barely holding together. "I told you," Jin said softly, stepping in and closing the door behind him. "If you needed me, I'd come." Jungkook didn't hug him right away. He didn't cry. He just stood there and looked at him, like making sure this wasn't a dream, like making sure Jin was actually real and not just another imagined comfort. Then, after what felt like the longest moment, He stepped forward and rested his forehead against Jin's shoulder. "I didn't know how much I needed this," he murmured. Jin didn't speak. He just lifted one arm and gently rested it around Jungkook's back. The same way he did when Jungkook was 16 and overwhelmed. The same way he did when the cameras went off and the youngest would quietly fold into him backstage. "I know," Jin finally said. "I could feel it from across the ocean." They sat together on the couch afterward, the warm aroma of breakfast filling the room. Jin had somehow managed to bring kimbap and seaweed soup in a thermos. "You need real food," he muttered, trying to brush off how much care he had put into it. Jungkook smiled for the first time in days. It wasn't a perfect smile. It was a tired one, but it was real. Jin didn't ask about the airport. He didn't ask about the Saesiengs or the pressure or the rumors. He didn't need to. Everything was already written in Jungkook's face, in the way he sat with his shoulders slightly curled, in the heaviness behind his eyes. Instead, Jin turned on the TV and queued up an old cartoon they used to watch in the dorms.
No agenda.
No pep talk. Just two brothers watching cartoons in a hotel room like they were 17 again. That afternoon, HYBE staff was surprised to find Jungkook arriving at the studio earlier than expected, his steps lighter, his posture more relaxed. No one mentioned the change, but everyone noticed it. And somewhere in Seoul, the rest of BTS began texting in a flurry. "Is it true?" Yoongi asked. "He really went?" Taeyum exploded in all caps. Namjoon sent only one emoji, a bear hug. And Jimin? He sent a voice note.
Soft.
Grateful. Hyung, thank you for going to him. I couldn't sleep after seeing that airport video. He's lucky. We all are. But no one was more grateful than Jungkook himself. That night, he posted one more message on Weverse. No photo, no fan service. Just a sentence that broke ARMY's collective heart open. Hyung showed up, and so did my piece. The replies flooded in. Fans crying, thanking Jin, reminding Jungkook that he was not alone. Again and again, they echoed one truth. Even stars need a home, and sometimes that home is a person. And in a world where so many things about fame are fleeting, fabricated, and filtered, the love between Jin and Jungkook reminded everyone watching. This was real, and real love doesn't knock for applause. It just knocks to make sure you're okay.